Irene Wu is a fellow with the Wilson Center's Kissinger Institute on China and the United States, and also the center's Asia program. That's when she's not a senior analyst for the FCC or an adjunct professor with Georgetown University. Irene, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
And she joins us today to talk about her project on measuring soft power. I'm very fascinated by the subject of soft power in general. So before we talk about how you measure it, maybe we need to talk about how you define it.
Well, soft power is usually talked about in contrast with military power and economic power. So soft power is a country's ability to persuade other countries to follow it. And it doesn't have quantitative measurements the way that military power and economic power is GDP. So my project is about trying to measure it.
And when you talk about countries want others to follow them, you're talking about practical things, whether it's trade deals, military alliances, whatever it might be. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. And it's, sort of the long-term basis of diplomatic relations. How do countries which countries usually work together? And it can have an impact on all kinds of foreign policy, whether it's economic or military, or even cultural and informational and educational.
What are some of the categories of things you're looking at that would qualify as elements of soft power?
So what's new about my research on soft power is that I'm looking at how foreigners think of us as we rather than as they. And so that's the new perspective I'm bringing, because I think if you can get to the point where foreigners think of you as a we, then that means they've really committed to your point of view. And to look at that, I think that means that those countries that have that kind of soft power relationship, it's not a relationship of one country projecting, having soft power over another. It's a matter of interacting. And so looking at that interaction, looking at whether there's integration of those societies, there's a couple of different indicators. One is migration. That's the ultimate. If I'm really interested in another country, I can move my family there. And maybe the simplest thing would be just to watch a movie from that country, just a little bit of a taste. And in between, you could travel to that country or you could study abroad.
And how are you attempting to measure this?
So for all those four things, there are indicators from the United Nations and from other international organizations. So I've built a data set going back to 1960 through 2015, over 200 countries, looking at how many migrants are there from one country to another, how many travelers are there, how many students go abroad, where do they go and where do they come from. And then I also have a smaller set of movies, how many people outside the United States watch American movies, not just how many movies Americans make.
Does globalization and all the things that entails, does that make it easier or more difficult to sort this out?
I think it's globalization and soft power are very much tied together. I think because it's easier to travel, it's easier to see videos from other countries. All these technological changes make it more possible for ordinary people to interact with people in other countries. So it's a great time to be looking at this kind of transformation.
Conventional wisdom in this area would suggest that the U.S. is the juggernaut, Levi's or McDonald's or Hollywood blockbusters. Is that still the case, or are other countries making inroads in the world of soft power?
I think if you look at these indicators, still the United States is very dominant. But that maybe as a fact is not so interesting in itself, because I'm not interested in creating a list with the United States with the U.S. as number one. That's a little bit boring, and I think it's been done before. What I'm really trying to understand is when there's a situation and you have 2 or 3 countries together, what is their soft power relationship in that moment? Can we see a history to their interaction together? And what might we observe that they're doing to change that interaction for the future? And what implications are there for the international
Well, you see, the relationship, the soft power relationship between North and South Korea right now is creating an opening in a tense hard power conflict.
That's really an excellent example, because the Olympics is really one of those regular events where countries, we all send national teams and we all retain our fighting national spirit, but really it's a global event. And in the rituals of the Olympics, the international community comes together, and that is so powerful that North Korea felt compelled to join the South Korean team in a unified we kind of team to be with the international community. So that the Winter Olympics coming up is really an excellent example of the we and the width of soft power. And for very briefly, we've delayed the possibility of nuclear war.
The more inclusive that we becomes, the better for all of us.
Exactly.
I know you don't do rankings, you made that clear, but
Uh-huh.
what are some of the countries that are making the most significant inroads in the exercise of soft power beyond the United States?
Well, I think in the conversation, you always hear about China and Russia and their soft power. And actually, I'm speaking at an event coming up at the Wilson Center where I'll be comparing these two. And using these four metrics, you can see that Russia attracts a lot of immigrants from around the world. And that is really, they are one of the leading destinations for immigrants, and that's because a lot of people go to Russia to make a better life. So not very different from the United States. In China, there are far few immigrants who go in, but China has had a huge increase in the number of visitors and a huge increase in the number of students who go there to study. So you could say that Russia is established as a soft power player, and China is a growing one. So you feel that momentum. They're not quite at the level of Russia yet, but there's that energy there.
What are the trend lines to watch? And I'd be honest with you, I'm thinking of things like internet technologies and social media that make it so much easier to share across the globe than previous technologies did.
Yeah, I really look forward to using this rubric for soft power to look at different kinds of new technologies, the social media and things like that. And the key thing that I'll be looking for is where are those situations where people from different countries really interact with each other, and they really interact for a common cause, or they really fall apart. So there's a real opportunity to explore more there.
You mentioned you'll be doing an upcoming event here at the Wilson Center. In addition to that, how do you plan to share your findings?
Well, I hope to publish policy papers that compare different countries and their soft power according to this rubric. And also I plan to post the data so that other scholars can use it and see what they make of it in their research.
And when you do, people can find it at wilsoncenter.org.
Yes, right.
Irene, this is fascinating stuff. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.